Brown, Tracey Brown live, Tracey Brown live, Tracey Brown, Tracey Brown live. Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown live, go to Tracey Brown live, go to Tracey Brown live. Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown live, go to Tracey Brown live, go to Tracey Brown live.
My favorite symbol is the tree of life. Everything.
Tia. Natia, don't. We're having technical difficulties, everyone.
Nope,
Good,
I can hear
good.
you now.
Okay,
It took
good,
a second.
good. It is thunderstorming in Florida, which is where Natia is at.
Yeah.
And so we've been playing with Wi-Fi for about an hour, but I have the patience of Job. I don't necessarily care. I think if the show goes on, the show goes on. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Like, I'm always with God, good or bad. He's in the details, whatever that looks like. So, welcome back, Natia. You are one of my favorite women.
Oh, thank you.
You
I'm
have
glad I'm here to
always,
still see you.
in my world, I've said, God has given me everything that I needed, good and bad, to help others.
Amen.
So I think that you're having the experience that you're having because since this is long haul,
Yes.
we're going to need someone that understands long haul because doctors want to downplay long haul. But before we get into COVID long haul and what that looks like for you and others, let's remind everyone that you are a scientist.
Gang.
You are a Black scientist. You are a female scientist. You are an African American scientist.
Yeah.
And I love that about you. I feel like I am living through you because I find you amazing. I know before COVID hit, you were creating a whole scientific program with impoverished children and impoverished neighborhoods to get them to understand science and even have opportunities to, take them on trips.
Yeah.
And I know you were going to do it around August of 2020, but then God was like, slap to everyone.
Yeah.
Like the joke was on us in 2020.
Yes.
And the joke is still here, by the way. The Joker still exists. Michigan knows that Joker is still around.
Just saying.
Just
But
saying.
no. And I just want to say,
they're saying to you, welcome back.
oh, thank
Welcome
you.
back. Yes. And I told her, everyone, she doesn't want to believe me. Where is your fire? Because you got fire somewhere in your chart. Have you ever looked at it?
No, all I know is I was born May 17th, so I am most definitely a Taurus. And of all the Taurus characteristics I have is stubbornness. I know that I was not born in the wrong month, is all I'm gonna say. In regards
Well,
to my
here's the
personality.
thing. I know other Taurus people,
Mm.
right? And is Taurus opposite Libra? May, June, July, August, September, October, November. Taurus is opposite Scorpio. But I know other Taurus people, and I find that they do have this public persona. Like they can be really, they have this ability to capture audience. So I know this about Tauruses, just people in my lives. Like, right? When they're at home, there's a party. Oh, we are going to be wrapped around a Taurus. Why they got the funniest stories? Excuse you. Why? But they do. So I think you just might be a typical Taurus. Because I know Taurus is like you. Where were you born?
Wait, I think your
Where?
sound tapped out.
Mm-mm.
It's going so well.
It's okay. It's just a glitch in the system. I'm not worried.
Okay, one more time. I'm sorry.
Can you
Okay,
hear
now
me?
I can hear you. I can hear you now. Okay. See, there were some
There's
things.
two things that's happening. There's a glitch in the system.
Mhm.
So you may not be able to hear me, but I can hear you. So when you begin to talk about COVID long haul, just know that you can be heard.
Okay.
Where were you born?
Hinesville, Georgia. Georgia peach.
You're a Georgia peach.
Yep.
Oh,
I like to say it's
Hines,
why I got some curves, but
Hinesville, Georgia. Well, girl, please. You black, you got curves. If you're a peach eating southerner, you got more curves. So 5/17, what year?
1990.
Oh, you're just a little bit younger than my son. And do you know the time you were born?
Nope.
Text,
I was
text your mama.
1 sec.
Mm-hmm.
See, now you have me on the spot of
Mm-hmm.
like, ask your mom if you were born. What time were you born? If she was watching, cough, cough, if you're watching, she could give me the answer. But let me go ahead and ask her.
My mom's a Leo, by the way.
Yeah. So sorry, you're going to
Um,
see a close up of my face for a second.
well, your face looks good. Good, good, good.
Thank you. Okay, message sent.
Okay, so she sent the message, so
Okay,
we'll just
perfect.
wait.
And before we while we wait for some people and we're just doing soft talk, can I just say that I will you see Tracey doing her readings, but when I tell mom went straight for the jugular, she said 9 a.m. was when I was born. Was the time of day I was born. But
You're a morning baby. I love morning people. Not too many people are born in
but
the
I wanted
morning.
to say for those coming in, yes, Tracey has her own public persona that she has on her YouTube channel, and you've had the pleasure of.
Oh, no. Damn it. She was about to give me all my props. And look, I'll look at this. Taurus, Sun, Aquarius, Moon. Look at that. Oh, she has a Cancer ascendant. So it's all her Taurus. She's a fire Venus, but that's not really it. Wasn't looking for a fire Venus. There's a lot of water and earth in her chart, and with an Aquarius moon. Aquarius moon could make her a little showboaty. That could be it too, though. Okay, we lost our. Sorry, don't worry. Yep, she's in and out. Marie, 4 a.m. No. Ah, she's having problems with her thunderstorm out there. She has a great chart here, so I'm just going to send it to her so she could see if I missed anything. Yeah, very few people are born in the mornings. Well, wait, I don't mean it that way. I mean in the light of day. I'm sorry, Marie. In the light of day, most people are born by the pull of the moon. No. Natia. There you go. I have her name as Natia/NASA. I am getting hot in here. I would add her to the stream, but I could tell she's not here. But let me add her anyway. And then let me. Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. So just start talking.
I just
So,
got your link.
oh, good. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're all Taurus, but it also could be your Aquarius moon that gives you a little bit more vibrancy. Because Aquarians are very animated. The women are, not the men. So tell us, what is going on with long haul COVID in the Black community? Stuck again? Okay. No, having trouble today. Sorry, guys.
I'm so sorry.
Don't worry. Don't worry. I can hear you, though, but I can't see you.
And you know what?
Hmm?
Let me try one more thing, just
Go
because I
for
want
it.
to make sure I don't interrupt in the middle of positive information. So if you can move me to the backstage and let me do
Sure.
something real quickly,
Sure.
and
I'll
we'll see if
remove
this
you.
is the.
Okay. I'll remove you from the stream.
Okay, thank
Okay. You're welcome. Um, oh, yeah. Natia is wonderful. I adore her. She's younger than my son, so she's like a child for me. Let me see. How's everyone doing? Georgia Peach, welcome back. Know you. Hey everyone. Hi Miss T. Hi Jewel. Hi Stephen. Hi guys. The guest is running late. Oh, that was me. Hello, Queen. Here I see cleaning cabinets and listening. That's so cool. I'm here for this, Miss Tracy. Thank you. Learning, Natalie. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. Yes. Yeah. She looks so much better than last time. Like I can, you know what I hate? I hate that this thing starts to make me. I remember when she was on the show the last time. How much time do I have? I remember that I could tell by the way she was talking and the way she looked that she was not okay. So my heart goes out to her at the time, but she has since improved so much the way she looks. But she does have long haul COVID, which is hi Tamishia, hi sweetie, hi Kenneth. I know Kenneth, I know we can't wait. Hi Tarika, how are you, sweetie? Hi Kay. So yeah, I can't wait either. I feel like I should be putting on a sideshow while we're waiting. Oh, next week I think I'm going to talk about um, Masaru Emoto and the water crystal oracle next Saturday, and then I'll start using it during the week in dashikis and bonnets. But I have to study it more because I need to figure out, like any new deck, what's the best way to use these cards. And it has such a tiny, it's like 4 pages long of explanation, which for, you know, a 48 deck like this, like, how could this be so small? But that might be the Emoto way. But I think I'm going to look up how he created these cards and what his intentions were, because he is amazing. He's no longer with us, but these are actual pictures of crystals in the water. And this is where he explains that you can produce loving intentions and produce amazing crystals. This one here might be a crystal that, when you start to create some dark spots, it might be a crystal that is not in a happy environment, right? But they're almost looking like snowflakes, but microscopically, these are what he captures from, you know, healthy crystals. These are real. These are real crystals. Look at that gold one. How pretty is that? Has a little bit of rainbow in it too. So that's what I'm going to do next week. Talk about Emoto, Dr. Emoto, and see how we all can carry on his ideology of your throat chakra, and what you say can have an effect on everything, including the very water that surrounds us. And remember, we are 70% water, right, guys? 70% water. Oh, there she is. Good, good, good. Okay, start talking.
Okay. I am hoping.
Talk to us.
I am hoping.
Okay, just talk.
Okay.
Just talk.
Do I seem to be better now?
Yes, but don't worry about that anymore. Just talk.
Okay.
No, talk.
Okay. So I want to first just say what I was trying to say before I got cut off. And that is, if you've had the pleasure of having a reading with Tracey, you know what you get is what you get. And I will say, hands down, she has been an amazing supporter of not only myself and my organization and our efforts to help kids still have access to STEM education during this time, but she has also made sure that others have access to it. And whether it's supporting a small business owner or supporting someone who she's done a reading with or for, Tracey is a genuinely good person. And I just want to say that for anybody who's in the chat who's wondering, can I trust her with my information, etc. I will tell you, upon my reading with Tracey and realizing that, I hope the card said I was a good person and she just wasn't giving me lip service, or at least I try to be.
No.
And seeing my reading, giving her that confidence to go, hey, I don't know what it is you do. I don't know what your initiative is this winter to give kids a take-home box so they can explore STEM and pretend they're a secret agent. But I have a grandson. He's in the age category. I'll buy him one. And that kind of supportive, I see you, sister. I hear you, sister. And I'm here to support you is amazing, especially when we've gone through the year plus of this nonsense. So just giving props where props are due, and not just private props, but public. So just thank you for that.
Thank you.
The last time we talked, no worries. I was trying to figure out a way to do it publicly. I was like, what better way than on your platform? So go to Tracey Brown Live if you're interested in more information. But
let me know
time we talked, it was August,
how
right?
else I can support. Let me know how else I can support you. My grandson is going to be back with his dad, so he'll be able to do more with the project. But let me know how else I can support you, because there's nothing better than getting kids interested in science.
Yeah.
So, yes, I think the last time you were on, it was in August. Yeah, I got you. We got each other. Nene said that. We got each other.
Oh, Lord.
So,
but I think August was the last time I was on.
Yes.
Okay. So, strange enough, I think August was the turning point for me. And I don't want to say turning point in a positive way, but the turning point in which another whole batch of symptoms and a new chapter and my long COVID or long haulers journey began. And now you can hear the actual evidence of the Wi-Fi.
I did
August
hear it.
2020, I had been
I
at that
heard the
point battling.
thunderstorm.
Yeah, see, I'm not using the dog ate my homework excuse. It's a real excuse.
I heard the thunderstorm.
Yeah, I would say August 2020 was the turning point in my long haulers journey, in which it went from completely physical symptoms like the chest pain, shortness of breath, headaches, kind of fuzziness when it came to memory or thinking. And I would say I was able to like get through life at like a 40% level than my pre-COVID norm.
Yeah.
August was like, oh, my child, remember when I told you I am preparing you for a greater test or something bigger? Yeah, you thought you were going to get better and you were going to be ready for the next stage in your life. Haha. I was preparing you for the actual battle. This was the warm-up training camp. Starting August was a whole new slew of symptoms. And I joke with my mom about this all the time. Every 3 to 4 months, I keep having this joke of, if I could just go back in time and talk to Nisha 3-4 months ago, yeah, sis, you know how you're suffering now? Wait, just wait another 3-4 months. This is preparing your body and mind for what else you're going to have to battle. And I say that jokingly because I understand now, with more information coming out, that I'm still extremely blessed in compared to other people on this journey, but it's still a lot to process and a lot to go through. And so I'm going to start off my talk or speech going through, this is not me trying to get sympathy. This is not me looking for pity. I'm doing okay. I'm doing pretty well. That's not what this is about.
Yeah.
The CDC and the NIH, or the National Institute of Health, with Dr. Anthony Fauci. You know him? Fauci? Like, get an ouchie for Fauci? Yes. That Dr. Fauci has just announced what long COVID is. So we finally have a proper medical term for what me and millions, come to find out, other Americans are dealing with at this time. And it's called post-acute COVID syndrome, or PAS, which means you are having COVID-like symptoms for longer than 3 months. It took a long time because, you know, we had a certain somebody in a certain Caucasian house, or, you know, house, that decided that this information wasn't important and there wasn't a lot of tracking then. But now we're starting to process that not only do we have millions of people who have recovered from COVID hospitalizations, but we have millions of people who never were admitted to a hospital, or who didn't get a positive COVID test because for whatever reason, they couldn't get their hands on a COVID test within the 2 to 3 days you need to get one, or they didn't know they had COVID because they didn't show any symptoms. And now it's come to our attention that not only are there millions of Americans suffering with these symptoms, it's not old people. It's not the senior citizens in the nursing home. It is people from all ages, including children. We are now realizing this in the past couple of weeks. I would say the past 8 weeks, I've received so much information, so much validating information, that we weren't making these symptoms up. We weren't making up the fact we couldn't go back to work. And the fact that, you know, the old saying your grandma used to say, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. A lot of pieces that we were going, how can I be the only one this sick? How are children not getting sick? How are people in their 30s not getting sick? How are I can't fathom, given how I got sick, why there's not millions of people sitting in their beds incapacitated. These past 8 weeks, you probably noticed In 60 Minutes, even, they did a special on long haulers. NBC News has had a long haulers or post-acute COVID syndrome or long COVID story every week the past 8 weeks. This past week, we also had NBC News and CBS highlighting long COVID in children, especially children who didn't show any COVID symptoms. And for the first time in my journey, these past 8 weeks, I have not gone to a doctor or a hospital or anyone in the medical field who's looked at me crazy when I've said, I'm still suffering COVID symptoms, or I'm still not able to breathe properly, or I know my CT scan or MRI shows that it's clean, but trust me, there is something wrong. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And no, I am not anxious, or this is not depression related or in my head. And so
yeah, I understand. No, I got
I
you.
think it's been amazing these past 8 weeks. But Tracey's been so kind to invite me back because I want to speak to people who are now navigating not only COVID and what seems to be a post-COVID, we still got COVID in fact, a post-COVID world, and may have family members or loved ones or colleagues who may have long COVID or post-acute COVID syndrome and don't know it yet because it's now just becoming something that's part of the conversation because we no longer have distractions. And so I say all that to say, I will take it back to us the last time you guys saw me. So the last time you saw me, I noticed a couple of changes. Like every 2 to 3 weeks, there was something new being thrown at me. But I couldn't really piece together what the next thing being thrown at me was going to be. There's been a lot of talk in the news about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and the AstraZeneca vaccine. I'm not going to get into that. All I will say is the concern about blood clots is real, but I think it's being talked about in a way that is kind of confusing for people. And I hope my August story will make sense. So in August, I started to notice that I was having a lot of pain in my upper thighs. And that was weird to me because the only part of my body that wasn't in pain until that point was my upper thighs. Like I would walk and it almost felt like a rush of blood or like something was going through my leg. And I kept going. I know there's not an alien in my veins. I know there's not. Why does it feel like something's in my thighs? And it's making it hard for me to move. And I'm just having this constant pain. And when I touch the area, it's extremely hot. And anytime that area is extremely hot or I'm in pain, I'm having shortness of breath, etc. After dealing with this for weeks, I started getting another symptom with it. And it was seizures. And I've never experienced a seizure before. And fortunately, my mother, as a registered nurse, has people have seizures before. And this is where I am extremely thankful I was not by myself when the first one happened. I was putting together a cabinet in the garage and the leg pain would come and go. But I was like, you know what? It's not the most annoying symptom. I can get through it. I was in the garage and I'll never forget this moment. And I felt extremely tired all of a sudden. Like my eyes were closing in on themselves. And I would literally feel like, oh, I'm just tired. Let me take a little cat nap. And I would do this. But a couple of minutes would go by and I would try to open my eyes and my eyes wouldn't open. And I was like, oh, okay, I must be really tired. Like college level Nisha tired. And so I kept trying to open my eyes and they wouldn't open. But then all of a sudden I noticed my head started moving back and forth like this. And I was like, okay, that's new. Like never been tired enough that my head started moving back and forth. This is new. And then my eye went into the back of my eye socket. And I could literally remember my eyelids fluttering as I was trying to open my eyes. And I heard a scream like an animal come from my mouth. And I was so disoriented. And you probably hear people who've gone through traumatic experiences state it's almost like you're looking at yourself and you're outside of your body. I was almost outside of myself, looking like, why are her eyes flickering? Almost like I'm not talking about myself. And why are you screaming as if you're dying? Like the most heart-wrenching scream. And while my eyes are fluttering, I can see my nephews who are under the age of 5, like looking at me as if I'm possessed. And my mother trying to hold my head and trying to tell me, like, are you with me? Are you okay? And it just kept going on and on and on and on. And it took like 5 minutes for me to get out of it, in which I had no control over my body. And it was almost like some eternal scream was coming out of me. And my head was moving back and forth. And my neck was almost having whiplash. And I felt it was almost going to snap off my body because it was so violent. When I finally came to, after like 5 or 6 of these back to back, my mom just looked at me and was like, so did you know you had a seizure? And it took me a long time because I couldn't believe that I had a seizure. Because the way I heard seizures described was, I heard seizures described as you black out. Like you don't know what's happening. Like you're flopping around, but you're not conscious of you screaming and clenching your jaw and your head moving back and forth and you're flailing. I had always been told you black out.
Yeah.
And so it took me a long time to come to terms with, Nisha, baby girl, you smart. If it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. You probably just had a seizure. And not just one, not two, but multiple seizures back to back. We need to get this sorted out, because dealing with shortness of breath and everything else. Oh, McCray, MCCRAY. Sorry. Dealing with shortness of breath. I know other people were dealing with a lot of gastrointestinal or stomach and bowel issues with long COVID at the time, and just chronic fatigue, like you're not able to do stuff. But August, when my legs literally felt like there was clots or something slowing down my blood. And I know that sounds crazy, but listen to me when I say it almost feels like you're in slow-mo and you can feel something's in your leg, or you can feel something's not right with your legs. I thought, okay, that requires attention, but it's not, I should be in a hospital under constant observation attention. Once I had my first seizure in August, I went, ooh, we went from I can hide this to I can't hide my symptoms, and I'm gonna actually have to have 24/7 caregiving services if this happens again. And unfortunately, since that day in August, I have regularly had those types of seizures every week or multiple times a week since August. To the point, there are moments that my neck is kind of like, listen, I know doctors are giving you a hard time, but you need to be a little bit more aggressive when you're talking to them, because this whiplash, I feel, girl, I'm going to have to detach from your body, because your neck is not able to hold your head for much longer if we keep going through this dance every week.
Yeah.
And so from August, sorry, give me a second.
It's free.
I'm trying to get
okay.
myself.
We got you. Yeah, don't worry, we got you.
Hold on. Forgive this part. I'm trying to make sure you can still hear. Okay.
We got you. Don't worry.
Can you still hear me? Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm here. Don't worry.
Okay.
We could hear you.
Okay.
You are
And
going
let me
in
know
and
if I
out.
need to switch.
No, Natia. Don't worry about the internet. We can still hear you. You heard me, sweetie?
Okay.
Nothing has to be perfect, so
Okay.
we can still
So
hear you. That's the most
it's
important
okay. Are
thing.
you
So
getting
keep
feedback?
talking. You're doing good.
Okay. Okay. Just give me 1 sec. Sorry. When I stood for people, that's when the universe started. Give me 1 second. I apologize. See, this is how I keep you hooked to the story.
But nothing needs to be perfect here. And that's the one thing I want to bring across to everyone. This isn't a perfect world. And sometimes the internet just screws up. But we're going to keep going. Are you there, Natia? I think I lost her. She was doing good until she saw that she was freezing up. I'm going to come out and see if I can. Oh, here she is. She's down here. Let's get her on. Doesn't look like. Yes. You're back. With no sound. Where's the sound? Sound. Well, I'm reading some stuff on COVID, at least in California, and I would advise you all to do the same thing because this is in California, there were 29 deaths as of April 17th, 527 new cases still. And of the deaths, 527 new cases, there are 498 people currently hospitalized, and 23% of those are in the ICU. There are 6,000 individuals that still needs to be tested. I don't know what that means, but 18% of the 6,000, and I don't know what the dates are, have tested positive. However, it is the lowest rate since beginning the pandemic, so that's a good thing. Of the 29 deaths, this is in California. I can only look at where I live. Reported 8 people have passed away. Over the age of 80, 11 people have died between the ages of 65 and 79. 8 people have died who were between the ages of 50 and 64. And 1 person has died between the ages of 30 and 49. And one person has died was between the ages of 18 and 29. So COVID is still having a huge impact on, I can only speak for my state, so it's having a huge impact in my state. Okay, Natia.
And
good.
I once again apologize. I'm sorry. I'm that perfectionist person, so this is driving me
I know. Don't let it drive you up the wall. I like
But
imperfection. I like it.
oh, wabi sabi, or the Japanese way of there's even perfection and imperfection. But
That's right. Wabi sabi. I love
yep,
that. Wabi
you feel
sabi. I love that. And I'll tell you why. Because the president used the word perfect so much, and he was nothing near. He was negative perfect. So I literally hate that word. I was on my radio show today, and the word perfect came up in a book. But it's a dated book. So this was way before 45 was in. And I had to stop. And I was like, I hate that word perfect. So we're no longer going to try and be perfect, because spirituality doesn't look for perfection. It looks for balance. So this will get balanced. I'm not worried. So continue.
well,
I
I'm
don't
hoping
know
the
where you stopped
information
off.
balances.
It will.
Oh, I stopped off with I was having what I now believe and now has been confirmed to be blood clots in my upper thigh, similar to the ones that folks in the Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca trials, and I'll explain all that later, like why, as well as started to get the seizures and tremors to the point that starting August, what I thought was, oh, okay, I can at least get medication, or there's treatments for shortness of breath, chronic fatigue. There's not so much treatments, but I can manage my life and learn how to pace and everything else with these symptoms. Once the neurological symptoms hit me in August, that's when it went, okay, Nisha, you were prepared for a pause in life from your overachiever normal to go cut down to 40%. It was going to hurt your ego and your goals and your dreams, but you could cut down to 40. Now we're looking at 20, 10, 5% of your normal operating levels. And I think that's when it went from a huge inconvenience, is how I viewed my long COVID journey, to life-changing, because that meant I couldn't risk getting on a plane and leaving Florida and returning back to Boston because of the blood clots, especially because they weren't going away. They just kept coming. Like, I didn't have a moment that I felt I could take the risk and get on a plane with the blood clots I was experiencing. And on top of that, with the neurological symptoms, with the seizures and tremors and everything else, I was scared to be by myself because how violent they were. It could have easily have been me in the bathtub, getting out of a bathtub, and I had a moment, and I could have cracked my head open or anything else. And so from August, it went from I am actively researching, trying to figure out how to make myself and others better, to it took on a life or death level, because I now know if it can reach these levels, somebody succumbed to this or the post-acute COVID symptoms at this point. There is no way that you have been able to go through this. Even if you had a 24/7 caregiver, there's always a chance something happens. And at the same time, I found this support group because I posted on Twitter like, hey, it could just be me and my crazy little world. Anyone else having seizures, tremors, blood clots, periods that are trying to kill you, or acting as if you are taking a baby from this land? Anybody having,
Wait,
is this the COVID, the pandemic is this what this is?
Your periods were out
Like
of control too?
It was to the point, like, I already had bad periods or menstruals for the shy folks in the back. I would have them before COVID, to the level of if I could take a day off, I would, because the cramp levels would get to a point that I couldn't maintain the pain. I would be at an 8 or a 9 out of 10 that I would just scream into a pillow. So it's not like I'm somebody who's not used to hardcore periods or menstrual cycles. And I was never regular. So it wasn't like the irregularity scared me. I'm like, I've been irregular my entire life. None of this is spooking me. And this will be the part if you're sensitive. But I'm saying this because this is one of the identifiers now. If you've been exposed to COVID. And this is something that, and I'm tying this all to the vaccines in a good way, that women who've taken the Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson vaccine are now experiencing weeks after they've taken the vaccine. And that is these periods with black or very dark blood. And it almost feels like you are being punished because you didn't carry a baby to term is the best way to explain the feeling going through them. And I thought it was just me being dramatic. But when my partner, when I was in my early stages of this journey, when he went, hey, I just let you know, you've changed several Fenty shades in the past 24 hours. You've went from caramel to like a drop of caramel in a black coffee to pale white 100 shade range of Fenty. And
you're talking about the color of your skin. You're talking about the color of your skin.
I literally was going from my skin would get darker for a couple of hours, not from sunlight or a tan. This is all indoor, huddled in a blanket, to like pale. And he's thinking he needs to take me to the ER because this is the level of the menstrual cycles. And then I would some months get 2 of them in 1 month. So when I say, I'm laughing because I'm on one right now. And you just gotta laugh at the flashbacks.
So I have a question for you.
Has to approach you. Go ahead.
I have a question for you because I think there's 2 things we're talking about, and maybe not. There's someone that is currently dealing with long haul COVID, and someone who took the vaccine. Is that what you're talking about? You're talking about in terms of your period.
I'm saying just listen to
and vaccine.
Yes. I'm saying the past couple of weeks, you're hearing news stories about side effects people are experiencing after taking the vaccine. I'm dropping little breadcrumbs because I'm going to piece all this together about why the vaccines are causing these side effects, blah, 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 blah. And so that's why I'm going into detail regarding certain symptoms. So that started,
the mRNA.
That had been, oh yeah, because of the mRNA vaccines, but it's in all the vaccines. This is not just an mRNA vaccine side effect or a Pfizer Moderna side effect. And so,
yeah, I heard that Johnson & Johnson didn't have the mRNA.
Right. Johnson & Johnson and Oxford AstraZeneca are the 2 non-mRNA vaccines. The mRNA vaccines are Pfizer and Moderna. If you need like a quick rule of thumb to help you know which ones are mRNA and which ones aren't, the mRNA vaccines are the ones with the higher efficacy levels. So if you're 96, 90% efficacy level, it's the mRNA vaccines because they have more, they create a better response in your than the non-mRNA ones. And I'll jump ahead to that in a bit. And I'm just saying this, like, do not.
No. No. We lost her. Erica, I'm pretty confident your doctor encouraged you to take it. I cannot believe he forced you, but I believe he scared you and influenced you. So here she is again. It's all good.
I see you. I have a purpose here, and I will continue moving forward.
You will. You will.
But so I'll explain the vaccine stuff. All I'm explaining right now is symptoms I have as a long hauler with post-acute COVID syndrome. So just keep these
Yes.
nuggets in mind, because I'm going to explain how this all ties together. So
Yes.
since August, I will say every month since August, I have felt my cognitive ability, my ability to concentrate, my ability to go through daily tasks, my ability to remember people's names and ages, when I was able to take multiple streams of information. Now I
Yeah.
struggle to even follow a cartoon on most days.
Yeah.
I have felt every month it just go down and down and down.
Yeah.
And I can say as of April or this month, I have a lot of jokes with my mom, but I say I feel like a 70-year-old in terms of my mental ability, when I could have said before COVID, I was a high functioning 30-year-old. And
I agree.
thank you. And I'm going to say in a good way. And the problem you have with post-acute COVID syndrome is that as you're going through these symptoms, you're going to start having anxiety, because as you see your body and your mind start to fail, you're going to have economic anxiety of, crap, I can't work a full-time job. I can't work my 9 to 5, or I can't maintain certain income streams. I'm going to have to adjust my lifestyle. And because you're going through physical pain, mental pain, economic uncertainty, and seeing yourself increasingly become less of yourself, that leads it naturally to anxiety and depression and other mental disorders.
Okay.
What we now know is that 1 in 3 post-COVID patients, whether they knew they had COVID or not, are now reporting mental disorders. On the low end, it's anxiety and depression, which they don't know if it's tied to, I was working as an engineer at this amazing firm, and now I've had to go on short-term disability, and I'm not getting better after 12 months. So unless my job offers long-term disability, what am I to do? I can't apply for disability because post-acute COVID syndrome is not even really known yet. And it's not even a thing at the disability office yet. So there's a lot of anxiety and depression on the lower end of mental disorders we're now seeing in 33% of American COVID patients 6 months and on. And on the other end, we're seeing psychosis, schizophrenia, bipolar. We're seeing a whole spectrum of mental disorders that now scientists and doctors are concerned, is this because COVID breaks the brain barrier inside your head pretty much and infects your brain and causes your whole body to go on the skits, which is your heart, lung, kidney, liver, blood, anybody who's not the brain's best friend. It's like, yeah, you're going to go all over the place in your reaction, which we call an autoimmune response. For those who are familiar with autoimmune diseases, you know they are multi-organ. So when you have the virus break the brain barrier or the brain membrane, you can have this.
So you can develop, you believe, at this stage, an autoimmune response. But I'm still asking, is that long haul COVID or is that the vaccine? I'm still getting confused.
Okay, this is all long haul COVID I am talking about.
This is all long haul COVID.
All
you
long
can
haul
have
COVID.
All of these signs, including psychosis.
Yep.
Might start out as anxiety, but including up to psychosis from long haul COVID.
Yep, or post-acute COVID syndrome.
Or PASC.
PACS. For the people.
PACS, which is, they're developing all of this, but it still doesn't fall under any disability guidelines at this point. So if you get diagnosed with something, then you're just going to get diagnosed with mental illness, not necessarily.
Exactly. And so for a lot of us, until March, when the National Institute of Health finally gave a name to it, and they said, oh, You people are calling yourself long haulers and long COVID because we haven't given you a medical term for it. But here's the medical term we will now use: post-acute COVID syndrome. And the reason why that is important is now your doctor has a medical code to use when you go to the doctor's office or you're in the hospital in order to say, this is what's wrong with you. Before, they could only list the symptoms you were experiencing. So when I went to the ER, they couldn't say post-acute COVID syndrome because they didn't have a name for it. Remember, all this stuff is new. So we're seeing how this comes about. Just like HIV and AIDS, there wasn't a name for it.
There was
so
a
it was
development
just
of, yes. But it's important at this stage, at the NIH, you know, solidified long haul COVID, because without the numbers coming in from the hospitals and the doctor's office to give a code to your symptoms, no one can get help. We can just ignore you guys.
Exactly. And that has been the problem. I can say from personal experience, my ER visit in July, I was told, if for those who remember from then, I was told I had chest wall pain. That was why I couldn't breathe. And when I mean couldn't breathe, I don't mean like anxiety attack. Oh my God, the walls are caving in. I mean laid out on the floor, praying to God that I can get another dose of oxygen to my body, and I cannot move, shortness of breath. But because the medical code has difficulty breathing and shortness of breath in kind of every category, if another doctor looks at your ER report and goes, okay, you reported shortness of breath, chest pain, back pain. Oh, well, the only thing in the system that ties these three symptoms is chest wall pain. Despite me knowing you do not have chest wall pain, I can only put you down for that. The closest anyone I know of before they actually came out with the term post-acute COVID syndrome got to post-acute COVID syndrome was post-viral infection. But in order to reach that threshold, I'm going to say here from a medical billing standpoint, you have to be willing to have a doctor, okay, and your insurance company, okay, a lot of expensive tests. For example, I was fortunate in February when I went to my first neurologist appointment. I went in to see if my seizures were tied to epilepsy because there's treatment for seizures tied to epilepsy. My biggest fear was if my seizures were due to post-viral infection. Like, let's pretend, I was telling myself, let's pretend this isn't related to COVID because everyone keeps telling me it's not related to COVID. Let me do this EEG. If my seizures are not related to epilepsy, then they're related to post-viral infection, which we know existed before COVID, because if you get the flu, a lot of people who get influenza or SARS or other coronaviruses do experience similar symptoms. And they're known as post-viral infection, including neurocognitive disorders, which seizures, tremors, and all of that would fall into. So let's not pretend we, as a medical community or a scientific community,
have never heard of this.
Right. And the problem we had back then is the number of people who would come into a doctor's office, let alone women of color coming into a doctor's office claiming, hey, I had the flu like 6 months ago, but I've been having these seizures that to the point they've cracked 2 of my teeth. I think there's something wrong, but all my medical tests keep coming up clear. Could I get an EEG to make sure my seizures are not based on epilepsy and I can go and look at antiviral treatments or something for these lingering symptoms? Most neurologists or primary care physicians would have went, no.
But they have to justify it.
Exactly. And now we're starting to get information about, no, there was a period of time in the 80s and early 90s that there was a really bad case of influenza. And there were hundreds of thousands of people who came to their primary care physicians with post-viral infections, whether they were neurological or any other multi-organ like flare-ups or autoimmune response. This was known as the yuppie flu, because most of the people who were able to get to a doctor who took them seriously were upper middle class white women. Now knowing that the yuppie flu period was a small segment of the population, it was only about something like 2-3% of the American population was exposed to this very contagious
Weird.
and dangerous
Yeah.
strand of influenza that hit that year. So we're talking about, there are women to this day, I just talked to one, who have never recovered because no one believed them when
Oh.
they had it back then. So the only thing different now, and the reason the NIH is now first recognizing not only chronic fatigue syndrome and most of the symptoms tied to long COVID are post-viral infection symptoms. And this is not, millions of people are pulling these symptoms out of the air and batching them together because we love getting blood drawn at the hospital and paying thousands of dollars in medical bills. No, this is a real thing. This is not post-pandemic or pandemic-induced anxiety or asthma. These are real symptoms, and these individuals
associated with COVID.
Exactly.
So this is making sense because as you're talking, I was getting psychically that this is going to change healthcare.
It is. I would say I'm a optimistic pessimist or optimistic realist, in which if my initial fear going into this journey was that these symptoms I was going through starting in April were only affecting Black women between the ages of 25 and 40. Because I said, oh, we're not going to get a single research dollar. And that's me being in STEM and associated with the medical field going, my mother has a chronic illness and they still pretend lupus doesn't exist. And the only medication they give for that is some stuff that came out in the 50s. Oh, Lord, I'm in trouble. But now I'm looking at this and realizing, oh, we have messed up so bad as a country. I don't care what side of the political aisle you fall on. When your government tells you that 30% of America has been exposed to COVID, either had COVID and were symptomatic or asymptomatic at this point, you have to look at that number and go, okay, let me bore you with some math. If Dr. Fauci is saying at least 20% of people who've been exposed to COVID, whether they had COVID symptoms or not, become long haulers or are suffering from post-acute COVID symptoms, regardless of age. That's the key part, regardless of age. Okay, 30% of 300 million, that's about a third. So that's 100 million Americans. 100 million Americans have been exposed to COVID at this point. 20% of 100 million Americans is 20 million Americans. And you know what? For rounding error, I'm going to say between 8 to 18 million Americans are safely dealing with post-acute COVID syndrome, whether they know it or not, because either their primary care or the emergency physician they went to in the ER hadn't heard of it and said, oh, you can't breathe? Oh, that's probably anxiety. You know, a lot's going on with this pandemic. You should probably, call your boyfriend and see if he can come over and help you with your anxiety. These are the stories we've heard. And women capturing themselves in ERs who've had strokes, half their face is not moving. And they are being told, are you sure it's not anxiety? Oh, I can't talk on half of my face, but it's anxiety. That's just every day. And I think if it was just women of color, that's one thing. And I'm trying to say this in a nice way.
No, you don't have to. You don't have to.
I know, but it's still the Christian teacher in me trying to not scare the children, is what I like to call it. The good thing about post-acute COVID syndrome, the one silver lining, is that it's not only affecting women of color, it's affecting almost all women across the board. And it seems to favor women, which is the only negative part I have to say, because when we know about medical research and where the dollars go, anything related to women, it's kind of are women really suffering, or is this just their antics to get attention? Yeah. But now that we have long haulers who are men, and men in high power positions speaking out or suffering, I am noticing a change in this conversation.
We get a diagnosis.
And
wow.
I hate to bring this up because I hate to use the passing of someone as a public service announcement.
All right.
So For those familiar with Texas Roadhouse, the actual barbecue chain in the southern United States and some parts of the Midwest. If you're familiar with
Yeah.
Texas Roadhouse, they have the honey butter rolls. If you are restaurateur,
No.
the founder of Texas Roadhouse committed suicide because he couldn't get help with his post-acute COVID symptoms. And he took his own life a couple weeks ago.
Oh.
To the post-acute COVID symptom community, to me, it was the first time I have ever seen published anything about post-acute COVID symptoms or long haul being devastating and debilitating to someone's life.
Yeah.
I have always seen the narrative be, these are just individuals not coping well with the quarantine. And I said,
Yeah.
I'm going to speak about myself and the people I know. Despite dealing with this, I have still taught students. I have still created products to help kids who've been stuck at home. I am still managing a company, God willing, through this to help your kids stuck at home with you. But I am not coping with the pandemic well. Almost the entire support group is full of Black women who were movers and shakers in their community. And they're getting pressure to go back to work because those communities are falling apart because you're not there. And as I said in August, Black women are the canary in the coal mine. And a lot of individuals, when we start reopening the economy, are going to go back into the office and go to their desks and go, I wonder where Gloria is. These desks used to be so clean. Or, hey, I missed that smiling security guard at the front desk. Or, hey, the nanny we usually use isn't picking up our phone calls. I wonder where she's gone. Or, I went to Starbucks and my caramel macchiato hasn't tasted the same since July. And I've had to quietly tell a lot of people what I said in August has come to fruition. 20% of the people in my support group have died. They are no longer with us. The majority of us who've been in this battle since March and April are no longer working full time. And some of us, almost approaching half, are no longer even working part time because we can't.
Yeah, I heard.
I know a lot of people want to say, 20 million, that's not that bad. As we scoff at passing 600,000 COVID deaths, you don't know who your life depends on and relies on to run as smoothly as it does. And that is why, regardless of whether you feel COVID is real or not, I want you to listen to the symptoms I've laid out and look to people in your family and in your circle and at your work and ask the question, what is the likelihood that this person is suffering from post-acute COVID symptom and doesn't know it because the medical system, our media, and everything else has failed them at this point and hasn't reached them so they can at least know, I'm not crazy. My body is actually shutting down on me. So the last point I wanted to make was in regards to the vaccines. So I saw someone comment, like, what vaccine did you take? So last week, I took my first shot of the Moderna. And I went through the side effects of the Moderna vaccine. And I will say here, it was a flashback to my first 2 to 3 weeks with COVID. And I would say this is not to scare anybody. I'm going to explain why that's the case.
Can I just
go ahead?
Insert comment here.
Okay.
I'm wondering if you had very specific symptoms after the vaccine because you're still in it. You're still in it.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm going to say this here.
Ding, 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 ding. I win. Yes. I win.
So I'm going to say, yes, that is a valid question to ask. If it's because I'm still going through post-acute COVID symptom, she's like, Anna's right. Just because I'm still going through post-acute COVID symptoms or the syndrome, did the vaccine exacerbate or make worse what I was going through? And the side effects I felt weren't really by the vaccine, but because of my overall symptoms I've been battling a year. So I'm going to go into teacher mode. For those who are questioning the vaccines, the vaccines, and this is not Nisha repeating media garbage or what have you. I know people who've worked on all 4 vaccines available in the United States, even that 4th one that got the baby shampoo and lotion name, that's on pause right now. I know people who've worked on all 4, and no offense, those people are scared of me, so they would not lie to me. None of those vaccines have actual COVID or the coronavirus in the vaccines. When you take a vaccine, all the vaccine does, it's almost like a fire drill for your body. The vaccine tells your body, hey, listen, I'm looking around this building. You got a nice body here. There's this thing that's out in the world that you don't know how it's going to affect you. So for the safety of this really nice body you got here, let's do a drill. Let's just do a practice drill. I pretend I'm coronavirus, and you tell me how you're going to respond to it. And once you see how you respond, you'll realize, like, man, I need to change that sprinkler system because that didn't go off when it was supposed to. That fire alarm isn't working. Maybe I need to fix the signage, or maybe fix that weird little light so people could actually get out that emergency exit. That's what the vaccine does for your body. It basically tells your body, hey, we're going to do a drill. We're going to run through what will you do if coronavirus hits your body. And you tell us what you're going to do. And then I want you to evaluate what your response was and what you can do better. That's what vaccines do for your body. So that's why you have side effects when you take a vaccine, because that's your body going through the fire drill. So when you take a vaccine such as the Moderna and Pfizer one, for example, that one has the closest, is the most comprehensive fire drill you can do, right? Because that one has almost all the components of the coronavirus that your body's going to face when it hits it. So that way, when you take the vaccine and your body goes, okay, we know the heart wasn't doing well when we took this vaccine, so we're going to work on it. We know the brain got attacked for some reason. It was going through the membrane, even though when it went through the membrane, because it was a drill, it was harmless. We now know that's a weak point. Lungs, we need you to step it up because you didn't do well during that drill. So when you get exposed to coronavirus, then your body's like, yo, we got this. This is not our first time dealing with it. And that's why you take vaccines. And that's why there's no vaccine that's going to give you 100% protection. Because even when you go through the fire drill, there's always that one person in your building that didn't pay attention to the fire drill and is blocking the door, and everyone else got to punch him to get through the door. So there's always going to be something during the real emergency that's going to go wrong. What the vaccine does, it prepares your body so your body isn't running around setting off all these responses. Exactly.
Exposed.
It makes sure your heart knows, okay, we've been through this before. We went through the drill. Okay, I'm not going to increase her pulse rate to 113. I got you. We'll be at 92. Lungs, you know what to do. I know what you're going to do. We got each other. Okay, let's not send this heifer to the ER because we know what happened last time. That's what the vaccine does.
Okay.
So when you take the vaccine, the reason why there are side effects is because you're going through the fire drill. And the fire drill is going through the entire period of infection that you would go through if you were infected with COVID. So one of the interesting things about the vaccine, and this is what we're studying right now, is that people who were never exposed to COVID, when they get the COVID-19 vaccines, regardless if it's Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, or the Oxford AstraZeneca, their body is responding as if there was an actual emergency happening because the body's trying to figure out, this is the drill, what do we do? So when you get the sore arm, that's because your body's like, hold up, we got to figure out who just came in here and try to shut down anything else coming in here. When you're getting the heart palpitations, that's your body going like, okay, this drill is a little bit more real. Like, I think I heard real gunshots. Like, okay, like, who, this is scary. When you're having the gastrointestinal issues, that's your body going like, oh, wait, I didn't know the intestines and like her bowel movements were going to be impacted. Your hormones, your menstrual cycle is like, oh, wait, this heifer coming for me too? Like, oh, snap. I thought she was only going for the lungs. I wasn't prepared. So that way, when you actually get exposed to COVID, everybody, all your organs, all your systems are like, oh, yeah, see, I didn't know
We
Corona.
met you. We met you
Yeah,
before.
I didn't know Corona was coming in my hood, but now I know what you look like. And now I'm going to stop you at the door because you're not coming up in here. That's what a vaccine does. So don't be scared of the side effects because that is the vaccine working. That's why they tell you when you're taking the vaccines, do not take an anti-inflammatory like an aspirin or an ibuprofen because you want your body to have the anti-inflammatory response because you want to see which actual organs are going to have that inflammatory response so they are now prepared for when they're actually exposed. The reason why earlier I mentioned my blood clots in my upper thigh last year, as well as having the chronic fatigue, having the monstrous periods, these are the side effects that people are experiencing after taking their first and second dose of Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and AstraZeneca, regardless if it's an mRNA-based vaccine or not. And the reason is you are basically doing the drill of what it's like to go through coronavirus. And I know what that drill looks like because I went through it. In April, I went through it. And I will say this here. I did not know those first 2 weeks with coronavirus were as traumatic as they were. But taking the first shot of Moderna, I would say, and this is me being extremely transparent, it was PTSD flashback. I've never had one, but it would be what I would call my first experience of dipping a toe into that because symptoms I had forgot I went through the first 2 weeks of coronavirus. I went through the first 3 days after my Moderna shot. And I went, oh God, I forgot about this. Oh, I forgot this chest pain and not being able to breathe. Oh God, I forgot about the bathroom situation and vertigo. Oh, I forgot not being able to walk. Oh, I forgot about all this. Ooh, dang, that was a rough month. My brain had just went into rosy retrospection or perception on that. And yeah, the first 3 days after my first dose of Moderna was rough. But I think one of the nice things about the vaccine is it will show you what your body will do when it's exposed to COVID. So if you've never had coronavirus or COVID-19, when you take the vaccine, if you're having severe side effects, well, guess what? That means if you were actually exposed to the real thing, that's what your body would do. But you're not being exposed to the real thing. This is like the test. It's almost like being tased versus being shot. Both can do damage, technically. But the safe thing about the vaccine is the damage is minimal. The part that's concerning scientists and researchers is that they didn't understand how significant the damage coronavirus can do to your body. So when we look at the Johnson & Johnson and the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccines in particular, and we're looking at this concern of blood clots, this is one of the few times when we look at a vaccine and we go, wait, if the fire drill, if the practice round is causing debilitating blood clots in the upper thigh, which is a dangerous area, that's why they were so adamant about pausing and causing the blood clots to move and causing aneurysms, which is nothing but a blood clot that moved.
Yeah.
Oh, snap. What is it doing to people who get the real thing? I don't know if you're an Office fan or anyone watching is the Office fan, but remember when Stan Lee had a heart attack during the fake fire drill that Scott was doing in order to show the Office, like, you guys aren't as prepared as you think you are. And that's Stan Lee.
I could just imagine how it went left.
Right. Like they basically locked all the doors and they heated up the doorknobs to like make it like a realistic fire drill. And it got so realistic that Stan Lee, I think Stan Lee's the black guy had an actual heart attack. That's what the Johnson & Johnson and Oxford AstraZeneca vaccines did. Even though it was a practice and it wasn't real, it made the body react in such a way that it had real consequences. So if that happened during a drill, what would have happened to people who got exposed to the real thing? So I want you to look at when you get the vaccines and you go through your side effects, you are going through it with just the, hey, Here's a picture of what it looks like. The thing isn't actually in your body. And the way your body's reacting, that's every day. In someone with post-acute COVID symptoms or the syndrome, that's every day of our lives.
Oh.
And understand that what you go through is what we've been going through for a year. And that's the important message with the vaccines. I am telling people, yes, I am taking my vaccine. I have taken my first shot. I will have my second one in 2 weeks. And you know why I'm taking it? Because I'm going to explain some antibody stuff to you. Antibodies, maximum lifespan is projected to be 90 days. So just because you had COVID in the summertime while you were having hot girl summer doesn't mean you're still good. Even if you have antibodies from January, they're probably not there now. And the final point about get your vaccine early. We have enough Black and brown bodies, myself included, who've been guinea pigs for you. Get the vaccine. Do your fire drill, because we don't know what the next wave or next COVID variant is going to look like. And this fire drill is on, oh, she a baby coronavirus. This new one out here, and I'm going to talk to my people for a second. I have led a very interesting life, and not interesting like you're going to find me on OnlyFans, but interesting in the sense that I have friends and colleagues in a lot of places. I have colleagues in South Africa because our company had a base in South Africa for 5 years, and our company got its start in Brazil. When you hear variants being talked about in the news, there's a lot of drum beating about this is why you should stay inside, but also go to that restaurant and check out Godzilla versus King Kong. It's a lot of confusing messages about how seriously we should take variants. So I'm going to give you a plain English reason as the final reason to get your vaccine. My friends in South Africa didn't understand what post-acute COVID symptoms or syndrome was because they had just gotten COVID in the late summer, early fall. And you know what happens when you go to a new place, whether it's LA or New York or a different country, you're a changed person. Your eyes have opened to new experiences. Think of coronavirus as that person. She went to South Africa, she went to a couple other places, and her eyes opened to new experiences, right? And with new experiences and knowledge comes a new approach to life. When she went to South Africa, she realized this little spike protein I have is not really useful for these Black and brown people here because they have extreme heat, and the way their living situation is set up doesn't make it really good for me to like spread out and get to know them. So I'm going to change my little protein in order to increase my spread. Oh, wait, South Africa, due to the HIV and AIDS crisis and other economic factors, doesn't have a lot of old people? You mean there's young people here? Oh, I'm going to have to change this spike protein so I can spread faster among younger people. And that's what the virus has been doing the past year. The more the virus spreads through a population, just like a college student, they have their eyes widen and realize what they need to change about themselves in order to be efficient and to get through life and be that popular it girl. So in South Africa, we saw the coronavirus transform into something that was able to not only hit older people, but with time, it figured out how to hit young people. In South Africa, the reason why most countries who were paying attention were so quick to shut down travel to and from was that it was wiping out 20 and 30-year-olds with a breeze, just like here in the US during the first wave, it went through nursing homes. And that scared countries because it's one thing to sacrifice old people. It's another thing to sacrifice your workforce. And if you're targeting people between 20 and 50, that's your workforce. That's your economy. That is why the shutdown was prompted so quickly with South Africa. And that's why you keep hearing Pfizer and Moderna, as well as Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca, are trying to figure out if they need to create a booster shot due to the South African variant. We already know what the UK variant did because the UK variant said, oh, it's really cool in London this time of year during Christmas time. And it said, I think my target demographic is going to be between 30 and 50. And I'm going to go through there a lot faster because it's really cold. So people are bundled up in their homes and staying inside or in pubs and restaurants. And so this winter, you had the UK variant, the B117. It mutated in order to hit 30 to 50s because it had already depleted potential victims or potential spread in the elderly population, and they were already getting vaccinated. So she was like, let me switch this up, and I'm going to get 30 to 50-year-olds. I mentioned the South Africa and the UK variant because now the UK variant is the #1 variant in the United States, meaning the same situation in the UK in the fall and winter, which is going through 30 and 50-year-olds, is what is attacking the US right now, is what we are seeing in Michigan. LA even had its own variant, as you very well know, Tracy, that was wiping out Black and brown people because it said,
It was terrible here.
All the Caucasians have fled to their little pal. Oh, wait. So you mean the best way to spread is to adapt to Black and brown DNA sequences? Got you.
Okay, so let's bring that up for a minute because yesterday I talked about real estate and you and I had a conversation about real estate as well before you came on. And that was one of the issues that people are missing. Those of you that want to buy a home at, 100,000, 200,000 over. Those people have their homes to sell to you, Black person. You think you want the American dream. They sell the home to you and they got out of Dodge. And
yes.
You're left with COVID.
Yes.
I'm just trying to tie in.
No. And I say tie that in.
Make a big difference here. But if you didn't buy their homes, they would have been forced to stay here. Or they can sell their home at a decent price.
And I think you have to realize.
To not buy these homes. But I can't convince people of that because nobody gets it. You do not want the American dream. It's a trick.
I would say here.
The trick, even by way of COVID, but I don't think people did that on purpose. But you're absolutely right. They sold their homes. They got out of Dodge. We're left with a multiple of Black people that were not getting the disease. They weren't.
So I'm only going to say this here. If we look at Boston, and then I'm going to go back to the variants, but if we look at Boston, and I can tell you because I was there.
Yeah,
so this is not me looking at information, interpreting it. I am going to tell you what the data says and what my firsthand experience was. If you're from the Boston area or you know someone there, I live in Roxbury. So pretty much Roxbury is multi-families are sharing these multi-generational or multi-unit homes. So basically versus a typical home in the South where you may have 1 or 2 generations in one home if they're Black or brown. In Boston, you have 3 or 4. You have great-grandmothers, grandmothers,
right,
their children and their grandchildren all in one house.
Yes.
So because you have so many people in one house, dependent on the income of the able-bodied in that house, the able-bodied folks between the ages of 20 and 50 have to work the essential jobs, correct?
They're working.
So they have to go in and out of the house. Grandma and great-grandma are taking care of the grandchildren. Essential worker comes back into the house. At this time, we were told in Boston, if disease is not airborne, not to wear a mask. I literally,
not just Boston.
Boston,
they were anti-maskers in the beginning. I remember.
Well, in Boston, it was even more dire because you were almost penalized and in some cases fined if you were caught wearing a mask and you were not in a medical facility. Because
I remember that though.
Because there was such a need for medical masks, it was almost like police and other enforcement was utilized to make sure there was enough medical masks for the healthcare community. So we went without
We went through that in Los Angeles. I don't know about anybody else, but we definitely went through that.
Even fabric masks were basically looked at, okay, you could be potentially fined depending on where you were in Boston or where you were in the Boston metros, etc. So it was a very weird 2.5 weeks. And I'm going to personally say this was my qualm with it. I knew scientifically it didn't make any sense. If we looked at the cruise ships, which provided the greatest, to the scientists, the greatest experiment of how this disease or this virus spread.
Yes.
If people are locked in their cabins for 2 weeks and they're not mingling, how is this disease or virus spreading if it's not airborne?
Anyway, right.
Exactly.
But it was.
But those first 2 weeks, even to someone like me who was like, yo, if it looked like a duck, it quack like a duck is a duck. Even I was put into a position that I couldn't go into a grocery store wearing a mask. So I had to like pretend with like this scarf that I was just being a fashion forward girl with like a mask on through a scarf.
What?
And so me getting COVID and my community and my colleagues getting it was not a shock when we look at what happened those first 2 to 3 weeks and what variant we did have in Boston and why my post-acute COVID symptoms are so severe compared to people who got infected in Florida or in the Midwestern states, etc.
So
So
where is your lockdown in all of this? Because I think
March
at least
13th.
in California, you did go.
We were 3 or 4 days after you. So San Francisco locked down first. You guys went on kind of like you started the lockdown. We went on lockdown that Friday. And I remember because as soon as 2 hours before we officially went on lockdown, I had basically that week I told my employees not to show up to the office. I was cleaning out the office and organizing it while everyone was like, oh, we'll be back in 2 weeks. And I said, girl, I studied SARS and 6 months. And even I was not pessimistic enough to think we would fumble this bad. March 13th/14th is what we would call the technical shutdown because the school system didn't shut down until the 17th in Boston, approximately. So starting from, I would say, March 5th until March 25th, it was kind of no mask unless you were in a medical facility or a medical worker. Even if you were an essential worker, you were pretty much being penalized or fined if you were being caught with a mask, depending on where you were.
So this is making sense now. This is making sense because we had the same issue with the masks.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, I cut one of my bras. That's the day I decided. Swear to God.
I remember this video. Because I was like, let me check my bras and see if that's the undercover thing I'm going to have to do. Because
yes, I decided I would never wear a bra after that. Because I cut my bra to make it into a mask because we too were not allowed to purchase a mask, nor at some point you couldn't find it.
That too, yeah.
So I made my own bra masks. And then I brought I like to call them the criminal bandanas. That's what I like to call them. But I made sure I got pink. I was like, if I'm going to put shit around my mouth, that looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's going to be pink. And then I sent bandanas over to my family as well. And I was wearing the bandanas for a while, but I'm wondering, I think I know I think what may have happened is that period where we reserved the mask for essential workers, those type of professionals, because at the time, grocery workers were not using the mask. So we had healthcare professionals, not essential workers, wearing a mask. And one thing that they couldn't stop in the pandemic was essential workers going to work and people needing food. And I'm wondering if that space where because we got it bad, and I'm wondering if within that space is how this thing exploded.
I would say here, looking back on how I got it, and this is not me trying to figure out how to blame myself, but there was a period of time I went, Nisha, you know better. You know better. You almost gave up an entire lifetime of helping people because you stupidly didn't wear a mask. And I had to go, pause, Nisha. Let's rewind. Let's not do revisionist history here.
Yeah. Right.
The only place I went, and I have told people this, which is why it kept bothering me, was the grocery store. I already had a pantry. I kept a pantry. The only place I went was that me and my partner decided that we were going to move in together because he had a car and I was in Roxbury and he was on the outskirts of Boston. Because I knew, given Instacart and everything I was seeing on the apps, there was no way I was going to be able to get into a grocery store and no way I was going to be able to afford Instacart, because there was, for a good 3 to 4 weeks, they were charging $75, $100 surcharges for Instacart. Jackasses. And you had to wait a week for the grocery delivery. I said, I'm good now because I have a 3-4 week pantry, because as a Floridian, I have gone through Hurricane Andrew. I have seen what hurricanes and disasters can do. And I don't know about winter storms. I said, so if something knock out the power or I'm snowed in here, I got my can of beans, I got my rice, I got my bottles of water, I'm good. However, the way people were acting, I said, Lord Jesus, we're going to be in this more than 2 weeks. So I took my pantry, moved it to my boyfriend's place. And I was like, at least I have a car. So if we got to go into the woods because these people acting a fool, we at least can do it. You lean on me, I lean on you. The only time we stepped out the house in 4 weeks was that one grocery trip. And 5 days after that grocery trip, I woke up not being able to breathe, and neither could he. If he wasn't there, I literally would have thought it was me losing my damn mind in my apartment. But seeing him coughing and not being able to breathe, and me not being able to breathe, and us looking like the two blind mice wondering who's the third, it gave me a sense of sanity of, okay, I told people who had the privilege to do so, please use Instacart only if you have to, because I cannot imagine if senior citizens or people with underlying conditions are forced to go to the grocery store because they can't afford the Instacart surcharges.
They don't even know what Instacart is.
But at the time, everyone was in panic mode and going for self. No one cared to look. So for me, it was like, okay, I kept telling people, if you are with no underlying health condition, because at the time I thought, I'm going to get over this COVID in 2 weeks. Okay, I took an L, but I may have saved 2 or 3 people's lives because I didn't force them to wait a day on Instacart, because that's how bad the situation was in Boston. Okay. Now looking back on it, I do think the devastating numbers of people who died of COVID and who have post-acute COVID syndrome was because of the grocery store issue. And because the two populations that service all grocery stores in the Boston and Boston areas or suburbs are in Black and brown neighborhoods. And the two neighborhoods were posting up 15, 20% COVID infection rates. When I mean it ballooned. And the same thing about having multiple generations in one household. Not only did it balloon because that's where your essential workers were, but you also had the elderly and then children who probably had underlying conditions and did not have access to healthcare, believing them. As I said in August, I went to the ER, and I will say I'm heavily privileged. Like, I look cute. I don't look like I can't put 2 words together. And even at a level 9 out of 10 pain, I will read you a scientific report of what my symptoms are and will not let you argue me down that, oh, I obviously don't know what a migraine is. No, Heifer, I do. I won't be brute or rude about it. I'll just be like, are you sure? Because a migraine will show up on that CT scan you just took. So if me calling the hospital in April with gasping for air, and they said, well, oh, if you can talk, then that means it's not an emergency. Click. I call back. Oh, well, your primary care physician has to admit you to the hospital now because that's how many beds are limited. Who doesn't have my privilege could have gone through those steps? And even with my privilege, literally Blue Cross Blue Shield, my insurance company, was like, please just go to the hospital door and let them see your face. I went to 8 hospital doors. And you know what they said? You still look healthy. I literally had to be, bless his heart. So my boyfriend literally had to pick me up out the car and carry me to the doors. Like, please help her. And I could tell most of the time it was, I'm not wasting my bed on this person. But the people who looked like me, who saw me, they knew I had COVID. And I could tell on their face, they were just like, can't help you. And I think that they didn't have beds. If you have to pick between this 70-year-old who may not have, and no offense to my older people, but I'm going to say I'm going to do iRobot Will Smith here. If we're doing a 70-year-old who has a pacemaker versus a 30-year-old who was running marathons 2 weeks before.
Yeah.
No diabetes or anything like that, because you know how they like to tag diabetes on us Black people. No, not even a blemish on her health record. You still pick the 70-year-old because he happened to be from a suburb of Boston and because he is friends with your cousin's brother. So he has so much to live for. He needs to see his grandchildren. Yeah, she don't have kids yet, but that means there's no loss. I mean, we don't want to give her the potential of having some hoodlum children. So like, I feel like I'm doing a service. Like, you've had a lot of those calculations, whether privately made or publicly made.
Got it.
And looking back on the economy reopening a year on, I am now having white colleagues coming to me and going, I did not understand what you were saying was the rule, not the exception. Because at first people heard my story and when Misha went to the worst hospital in Massachusetts and they just didn't know what to do with the COVID. Now it's, oh wait, oh, my lawyer died. Oh, my barber died. Oh, snap. Like, these are people who are not even in 70 plus. And I had to explain to people in Roxbury, where Malcolm X grew up, like historically Black neighborhood of Boston. Mm-hmm. The average age of a Black American in Roxbury was 52 before the pandemic started. It was 52.
I don't believe that. What are you talking about?
Now it's estimated to be as low as 41. Because that's how many people we've lost. And when you look at the city of Boston's death numbers, you're going, oh, but out of 200,000 people, 6,000 is not a lot. But when you look at where those deaths were concentrated, you wiped out 5-10% of the neighborhood. And in some cases, you wiped out the income stream of a house. So that's in Boston, that house was like $1 million plus with taxes and revenue. That's a school district that won't get 10 Chromebooks because one house died or one house was forced to leave. And the folks we saw who were able to work from home and use Instacart and avoid that initial nuclear bomb that went off, of course we know they skewed a certain way. I was able to work from home. I'm not going to say like I'm not privileged. I was able to have a boyfriend with a car, which to some people, they're like, ooh, girl, your standards low. If you live in the city of Boston, A, being a Black woman with a man, I'm an exception, and B, a Black man or a man with a car, girl, I'm royalty. So I'm going to speak on my privilege that my story could have ended way before what I see it ending now. So and not in this way I'm talking to you.
Yeah. You're saying having a car prevented you from going on public transportation. Is that what I'm hearing?
And allowed for me to get more groceries. Because you have to think, I could go to the grocery store and I could get 2 to 4 weeks worth of groceries. Now, did I do that like I was a hoarder? No. Because the way someone shops for 2 to 4 weeks of groceries with a family is a different way I'm shopping for 2 to 4 weeks. I can make a box of pasta do what it do for a week. But if I had to carry that onto a bus, I would only be able to carry maximum a week. But because I was able to use a car, me and my boyfriend were able to not only shop for us, but shop for our neighbors who couldn't go to the grocery store. So it was almost like we were able to do 4 weeks instead of 1 week. And I say all that to say
those factors are hurtful.
They're hurtful, but they're realistic and true. And I hope hearing me and Tracey talking about this is helping you realize if you're in a situation wondering if you've been impacted by it, yes, you are a case study on how systemic racism and inequalities are in this country, that it literally, the quote is, your zip code is a determining factor on what your life would be. Not
you survive this COVID.
Exactly. Not you pulling yourself up by your bootstraps or how hard you think positively or anything else. Your zip
Right.
code is a defining factor. And even with all my privileges, I couldn't escape. And the thing I tell my mom and my friends and my partner that I struggle with the most 1 year in is what I call survivor's remorse. That I don't understand why I'm still here when people I know who went to Harvard were lawyers, were protecting their community from ICE. Like a good friend of mine who made sure whenever we had any legal trouble, she made sure no one missed with my organization. She died 2 weeks after I contracted COVID. And she was only 5 years older than me. We would run, we would exercise together, like we were both fit. And why was she taken out, but not a random a-hole walking down State Street who is only in investment portfolios because he wants to buy a bigger yacht? Why was he given remdesivir or the antibody cocktail that kept him alive, but she wasn't? And they have the same freaking healthcare plan and income. Like, that is what I feel America's gonna have a reckoning with. Because I am not an aggressive or angry person. I'm in education. I deal with passive aggressive, white fragility, and everything else under the sun. Or, oh my God, when you have a man who thinks, oh, I'm going to explain your paper better to you. Okay, Grandpa. You go up there and you try. I deal with that on a daily basis. And I am angry because I shouldn't have to look at why am I still here? And why are these other people who have did nothing but bless lives not here with me? Yeah. And I'm not even talking about people in my family yet. I'm talking about people who I've seen sacrifice every moment of their day.
Yeah, I understand.
And they're not here. And I have other folks telling me, oh, well, you know that the pandemic's over, girl. I got my new swimsuit. And I'm like, okay. And I'm just going to say this to tie it back so I don't want to get sidetracked. Yeah. This is where I'm going to try to circle it all back to the variants. I don't care where you are in the US or the world. I don't care what you hear. I want you to hear my spirit and my voice right now. There are variants we do not even know about yet. I told Tracey back in December because I was looking at the numbers. And I said, okay, the scientist is texting you right now. I don't know what you're doing in LA, but you need to stay in your house because the way the virus is moving on paper doesn't make sense based on its movements from April to November. And Tracy's looking at me because I kept saying, listen, I'm not there. I'm looking at the numbers, and the numbers are telling me it's mutated. And it's mutated in such a way it is doing numbers. And the fact they haven't said publicly it's a variant yet means the testing is so sporadic, they haven't picked up on the pattern. And you know, one of the things I'll say that's nice about my job, I stand at the intersection of a lot of fields and experiences. There's not a lot of people I've encountered who I can have a conversation with and I can go, I got connections here, and I look here and I look there and I can see the story that the numbers and information tells me. That's my gift, is communicating what the story is and making sure it's accessible and it's understandable regardless of your experience. Yeah. When numbers tell me a story and I don't have to be on the ground to say, well, Whoopi Goldberg said in Ghost, you in danger, girl. I was like, I don't know what happened. I don't know if the numbers are off. They got a bunch of bad tests, but the hospitalization rates, the rates from initial hospitalization to death, and the spread means it's mutated. Yeah. What did we hear now in February? Oh, there was an LA variant. That's why the numbers were so high in LA. What I'm hearing now, and this is not to scare you all, this is to let you know, if you've been hesitant, while everybody's scared of Johnson & Johnson and they done paused that, Walmart is giving the vaccine. Walmart. That's where I got mine because my doctor's office was backed up. Get it now because the variants we are seeing now, you may have heard in the news that Pfizer's like, oh, today they announced, yeah, we're going to have to give a booster shot. Like, we were playing around that we would have to get a booster shot because, you know, who would like that sweet money getting reimbursed $20 to $40 per shot. But yeah, we see this new coronavirus that just came back from her spring break in South Africa, and we done saw this heifer who had her Christmas vacation in Brazil, and these some bad heifers. What we saw in 2020, that was the slow cousin who was a Mormon and never saw the world. We got South Africa heifer here, and the Brazilian one, she kind of wild. That UK one, well, you know, she's bitten proper. You know, she still hasn't recovered from Meghan and Harry leaving, going to LA. So she's doing numbers right now. But no, you about to get hit with hot girl South Africa and Brazil, and those two have already caused Pfizer and Moderna to go. Not only do we need a booster shot within the next 6 to 12 months, but the 96% and 99% we were telling you, it's more like 64% with Brazil and South Africa, because they threw some new tricks at us. It's kind of what's happening right now in the biomedical and pharmaceutical industry, because once they're seeing the results of testing the vaccines against these new variants, they're like, ooh, crap. And mind you, the threshold for emergency use authorization is 50% efficacy. So if Pfizer and Moderna went from 96 and 99, and against South African variant, we know has been knocked down to 64%. And South Africa is like, ooh, she's that exotic girl that would be like on a Trey Songz video. But the Brazilian variant is like Amber Rose in her heyday, like she's the video girl. What is she going to do to the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine efficacy rates? Is she going to bring them below that 50% threshold that we're not only going to have to get a booster, but we're going to have to start this process all over again if we allow those variants to take a hold? And that fire drill, just like when you move into a new apartment building, the fire drill from that old apartment building no longer applies, because there may be that extra corridor or flight of stairs you have to go through. So I hope I explained all the variants, etc.
No, you did a good job. I do have a question here. That I don't know if it's vaccine, but I'll assume, is an intelligent beast. It mutates depending on where you catch it.
Exactly.
In New Zealand picked that up. So, and that's what you were saying about the hood, that. Okay. She
basically, just like a person, and I love that. I love comparing it to, because I think it's easier to wrap your head around. Think of a person who's traveled to a new country. Like, for example, when my mom went to South Africa with me for one of my work trips, her eye-opening experience was for the first time seeing Black people on the news and on commercials. And that when a white person came on, it was like, wait, what? What? Why are they here? My mom's eyes opened up to how biased our television and media in the United States and what that alternative reality looks like. The virus is the same way. Every time you introduce it to a new environment, all a virus knows how to do is adapt to be more efficient. It is pretty much, if you want a nerdy reference, it's the Joker. If you foil enough plots, eventually it figures out the plot that's going to take Gotham. And unlike the Joker, it's got a lot of staying power. So it's not going to be like, oh, once every 6 months.
Keeps coming back.
Exactly. Right. But you know how the Joker comes back, like, oh, they reboot him once every 2 to 3 years? Nah. She's like, no, I get rebooted in every person, everywhere in the world at the same time. So I get plenty of opportunities to figure out what works well here, what works well in a human client, what works well with only young people, what works well with only people who have only one genetic sequence because they've never had any interracial dating ever. They just have this one DNA. Well, I can take you out too. And if you give me enough time and you let me keep experimenting, I'll figure it all out. That's why you take the vaccine. Even if the efficacy rate drops from 96% to 64%, guess what? You still got 64% more. It's better to go into a battle with a gun and 10 bullets. I don't know how many bullets go in a gun, so forgive this analogy, than with none.
I know people that have taken the vaccine and no side effects at all. Gift.
Right. Those are probably the people who would have been asymptomatic. So good.
Okay. So what do you do with anaphylactic people?
That's where... No. But that's where I'm
medical advice.
No. Okay. Also, not medical advice. What I'm trying to say is there's a lot of people who can't take the vaccine. And I know, if anything we've learned in 2020 and beyond, is there are a lot of people who do not think of other folks. But the reason why, and there's a lot of language that's been twisted this past year, like herd immunity and all of this. The reason you want a vaccine in the population is because that girl, if she keeps hopping the clubs and the houses and different families and schools and office buildings, eventually, if every door is locked, the chances of her finding that one door that's open decreases. Or by the time she gets to that door, decreases. That's why the population who can have the vaccine needs to take it. We want to throw off the invader by making sure we lock as many doors and windows as possible. So the time it takes for them to keep checking all those doors, it slowly dies because she doesn't have access to food or, better yet, attention. And eventually, the hope is by the time she finds a door that's unlocked, she's so weak, she can't go in that house and destroy it or destroy that individual with an infection. Or better yet, she dies outside and we sweep up her remains when it's Street Cleaning Tuesday, is the hope.
So I just want to mention to everyone, it's not, do you have allergies? You know, allergies are a given. Everybody has allergies this time of year anyway. So really talk to your doctor. It's not about allergies. It's anaphylactic issues. That's for people who can't eat peanut butter, who can't eat fish.
Or eggs and things that will be...
to.
Yeah.
All right?
And that's...
Those carry an EpiPen. Those are the category of people that may have a really hard time accepting the vaccines in their body.
And no
if you
offense.
have just allergies, that's not the same thing. Talk to your doctor. Don't start that. Don't go, I got allergies. No. Talk to your doctor.
I will say here, the only reason you should say I got allergies is that you want to claim you have an underlying condition to get the vaccine. When we're talking about people who are allergic to eggs, etc., or who have specific allergies tied to vaccine development. For example, traditional vaccines like the Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca are basically made using eggs. That's why if you're allergic to eggs, you can't take the vaccine. Moderna and Pfizer are not made based on eggs. They're made based on taking the actual DNA or the code of the coronavirus, taking cheat sheets, writing it down, going C-A-T-G, oh, that's another C, C-T-A-G, putting that in a computer and saying we have all the proteins that make the C-A-T-Gs in DNA. And what we're going to do, just like in Jurassic Park, is we're going to connect all those proteins to make a substance and put it in an injectable form to go into your body. That is what mRNA is. DNA is the original code, your C, A, T's, and G's. RNA is the copy. All they did was look at the actual DNA of coronavirus. They took a piece of paper, well, a computer, but I'm just being an analogy, wrote down all the proteins they saw on the DNA of the coronavirus that makes up that scary ball with the spike proteins that we saw in January. They put it in a computer and said, you have a library of C proteins, A, T, and G proteins. Arrange them in such a way that we have a coronavirus. and they got that. But because it's not the original, just like when people steal Black art and culture, you can tell it's a ripoff and it doesn't have the same impact. That is what mRNA is. And they took the mRNA, which is just basically saying, this is for all your body. All animals and humans can recognize when this is injected in the body. This is the code to something that's a very bad thing. And that's what the vaccines that are mRNA are injecting with you. They're basically saying, here's the code for your body to know. Here are the cheat sheets. We wrote down all the code in the cheats. Now do your drill and prepare for when you actually have the real one show up at your door. It's almost like a mug shot that your body gets in a shot that says, you're looking for this heifer. Figure out how you're going to keep out your house. And when she show up, lock the door. Don't let her in.
I love that, because most mugshots, depending upon like how they take it, all of a sudden, it doesn't look like the person. You ever see that?
Yes, but I like that description. Sometimes the description can be between 5'8" and 6'9". You like, hold up. Did you look at the person, or we just guessing?
Are we just guessing? What are we doing?
I'm gonna say those type of mugshots are what the Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca vaccines are gonna be when we have new variants. The original mugshot you got is no longer going to really apply or be so descriptive to when you get coronavirus variant 5,632. You're going to be like, wait, they told me she was a 5'8" brunette with blue eyes and freckles. This Megan Thee Stallion looking at me like, I don't think this is her. Come on in. And then that's when you have issues. So if you think of efficacy rate that way, if it's easier to understand.
So again, let's just recap about allergies. Talk to your doctor. Don't just assume you cannot have the vaccine. I think you gave the best explanation on why it's important.
Yeah.
And I really needed to hear that. I don't think anybody on CNN, Good Morning America, NBC, CBS has explained to us why it's important to take it the way you did.
Thank you. I get to sit and be in teacher mode in my head a lot, so I can explain to family members and loved ones. And I just say, I appreciate you allowing me to explain it that way. And on two things, I agree with you. Please, if you have a PCP or a doctor who's not cooperative, trust me, I know.
Yeah.
I hate to say this because I never thought I would give Walmart props ever in my life. But Walmart has trained most of their pharmacy technicians to explain which allergies and underlying conditions you are going to have issues. The piece of paper I got from Walmart has been the most comprehensive explanation of the Moderna vaccine I have seen even online. They basically was like, yeah, this doesn't protect you from COVID. This is basically a fire drill. This is what is happening. I said, oh my God, who wrote this? Who needs to be promoted? Who wrote this explanation?
Yeah.
I will give Walmart that prop. My mother has had a great experience with her primary care physician, and she has numerous underlying conditions and chronic illnesses. And they carefully went through and said, the pros and cons, the pros outweigh the cons for you. And if they don't, after you talk to your doctor, or heck, even Walgreens pharmacists have now been trained in CVS and Target and Publix to explain to you which of these are in that emergency box. And the thing I will give this response is that they've been so scared of people not taking the vaccine, they actually have been writing down when people say, hey, I had this adverse reaction. There's actually a website called Be Safe that you can enter if you had an adverse reaction and what your underlying conditions are. And if you go there, you can even see what people specifically said who have your underlying conditions when they took whichever vaccine is available in the US.
It's called Be Safe.
V, like V, and Safe.
V, Safe. SAFE. Dot.
I think it's .org. Let me double check on my phone. Well, my phone's dead, so that's great technology. Thank you. But I will repeat, please check with your doctor or with a medical professional, even if it's your pharmacy tech or pharmacist at your local pharmacy. They have been trained to do this. And if not, guess what? You can call. They have now made it to the point, because they were doing such a focused effort on the senior citizens. They have now made it. You can call and ask your pharmacy, or call and ask the hotlines associated with those pharmacies. With those pharmacies. So please check. I hate to be this person going, okay, we've had enough guinea pigs, myself included. Get this shot. We got another tidal wave coming, people. Let's be prepared. And someone just made the comment, and I will touch upon it. I will give Israel its due. Israel has been at the cutting edge when it comes to research regarding COVID, the vaccines, and post-acute COVID syndrome. It was Israel who, back in October, was telling males between the ages of 18 and 45 to immediately book a primary care physician appointment. They said, because we're seeing an alarming rate of blood clots and aneurysms in Israeli citizens in this age group, and we think COVID has been spreading in our population. And the greatest significant symptom we can use to trace is looking at the rates of blood clots in hospitalized patients versus previous years, which is the thing they've been using to get the real COVID death numbers. Because if you go, well, only 200,000 people died in 2019, but we noticed 250,000 people died in 2020. Well, I know we keep saying some folks died of aneurysms or heart attacks, but what was the thing between 2019 and 2020 that would have led to a sharp increase in deaths? Probably COVID-19. So even though we don't have great testing numbers or records from, even now in some places we don't have great data to track this, we can look at long-term information such as, oh yeah, we noticed that the death rate jumped 15-20% in this county. Okay, people may have been depressed and off themselves, but not at 15-20%. What else could have possibly explained this surge in deaths? And Israel has done a fantastic job with this. And they now, I think they're one of the first countries to have actually tested the Pfizer vaccine, that is not the drug companies themselves, testing the vaccines against the South African variant, the Brazilian variant, in order to dictate their immigration and travel industry policies. And they were like, yo, yo, peeps, y'all over there, our Israeli brothers and sisters across the world, yeah, get your Pfizer Moderna early and then stay your butt back in the house. Because we noticing these two that America hasn't talked about yet is taking out our businessmen going to South Africa and Brazil. So here's a heads up. And that's why you saw South Africa looked at the Israel information, and that guided their decision to stop the Oxford AstraZeneca, because they said, hold up, you claiming you're doing 70%, 80%, all these numbers in the US and the UK. Well, here in South Africa, the number one variant is the South African variant. And you're not even hitting 50% with our people. So why are we paying for a vaccine that's not even going to save half of our people, and we're paying all this money? We'll rather put this money towards ventilators and towards the Pfizer and Moderna one, which is posting 64 and 75%. Brazil hasn't said anything because Brazil is still dealing with their own Cheeto.
So
and yeah.
I was taking classes, education on the Bible in Jerusalem, right? From in Jerusalem, two men.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, from September to December. So every week in class, they would give updates. One of the reasons why Israel wound up being at the forefront, not only of the research, but information, is because they have a compliant population.
Korea as well.
They stayed calm. They listened to the politicians. So when they said, this is what you need to do, they just did it, which gave Israel time to then look at the research, because they weren't having a bunch of resistant rebellion.
Yeah. Well, I think when we look at post-acute COVID
Beginning,
syndrome,
their elders passed as well in the beginning.
yes,
That was unavoidable when COVID first came. It attacked the elderly, period. And it attacked the nursing homes, even in Israel.
yeah,
But the minute they just really, this is a very disciplined, population of people in Israel. I can't say
yeah,
anything for the same culture in America, because
right.
Americans' attitude is to resist no matter what the culture.
Well, I have 2 points on that. The first one is Israel, Korea, Southeast Asia, China, and Japan, as well as New
Yeah.
Zealand and Australia, dealt
Yeah.
with SARS. And SARS, MRSA, and all these coronaviruses or highly contagious influenzas were
Yeah.
so catastrophic, not only to the population in the early 2000s, but it was politically a death sentence to so many rising stars or even stable politicians. Think of Barack Obama fighting Ebola. Imagine if
remember.
Ebola, right, and only a few people died, not 600,000 people.
Because of his discipline.
Right.
He
But
didn't
think,
panic the American population. It did reach here. These 5 people brought it here.
right.
But he really just contained the information, handled the situation. Boom, It went away. It was beautiful to watch him handle that.
It was beautiful, but at the same time, it wasn't a real test. That was a just be aware. Israel, Korea, they all went through the SARS outbreak and the H1N1, otherwise known as chicken flu or bird
I
flu,
remember.
pandemics. And politicians lost their heads. Literally, politicians were executed by people because of the response to those outbreaks. So it's not only a disciplined and compliant and non-selfish group. They saw what happened when they didn't do it. A lot of the mass compliance you see in Asian populations is because of the SARS outbreak and the bird flu outbreak.
Got it.
And they have lessons learned. The government learned that we are susceptible to our economy getting on its knees. They have slowly recovered from that. Slowly. And I will say this here. You can say what you want about China's response to the pandemic. I'm going to try to stay out of a lot of stuff. But the one thing Beijing understood was if the population felt that COVID was out of hand anywhere near the SARS infection, there will be heads rolling in the street. And that is why it was such a no. Lockdown. Now that we can't stop it, now we're realizing this is SARS 2.0. We can't keep the information private anymore. Screw it. Shut it all down. Like, what did Bob O'Reilly say? We're going to do it live. Shut it down.
Because I was watching on YouTube and there were screens where they were like, we can't even get food. Not that they were starving.
Right. But it was like, we're going to try to make sure we do not have a repeat of SARS and bird flu, because that was devastating to the economy. And they said, we know it's better to get the pain now versus let this drag out and pretend it didn't exist like we did before. America has not had that lesson in 100 years.
Well, this is
it was about time.
And
the second thing is, because of those lessons, they have a relationship with this particular type of virus. So America has really not dealt with the coronavirus, is when it's bad, it's bad.
So we had
a couple people, like Psychic Bella was exposed to SARS. I remember her saying that. But we didn't get SARS like we got COVID. We didn't get SARS like other Asian countries. And even when they got SARS, it was nowhere near our COVID levels. So you have to realize, what we went through in March and April, that was SARS in Asia. What we did after April of 2020, everybody said, yo, they wildin', like, ooh, like we learned in April, we learned that 10,000 people dead. Ooh, they Michael Jordan this. Oh, they went to 100. Ooh, we had 600. Like, I talked to my friends abroad.
Didn't we get over 1 million? I'm confused. I stopped counting because
I think we hit 600,000 official.
listen, the numbers were making me so nervous. The last I count, I think it was just prior to 45 getting voted out.
Oh,
I think it was within that week where
we had
still
just
didn't
passed
know
500.
who was president. The last I counted, if I'm not mistaken, it was 800,000.
No. That was COVID infections. I'm talking
No, this was
deaths.
deaths.
Oh, I
Oh,
know.
maybe it was COVID infections. Okay, maybe I'm
Yeah,
getting
because we just
It
hit
was
3
making me
million.
nervous. It was
Yeah,
totally
we just hit
making me
so we hit about, the numbers vary, so, but I'll just keep to the death total. We just hit 600,000. But if we adjust for what we believe the real death toll is, these are only people who were admitted as COVID patients and who died with COVID-19 as the cause of death on their death certificates.
Got it.
That is 600,000. What we believe now, we know all the ways people could have died and the different symptoms their death could have been labeled if there wasn't a positive COVID test, or somebody didn't say like, oh,
Yeah.
well, they were coughing, had a fever, blah, 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 and there wasn't a COVID test done at the time of death. If you adjust that, we're well above 1 million at this point.
You know, many of my clients have relatives that have passed, so I get the COVID information from an intimate place, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
But many of them, when I'm looking at the cards, I'm like, COVID, huh? And they go, no.
There's many people
They're
in
like,
my networks.
no. And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh." And they're like, no, it was a heart attack. And I was like, no. I could see the heart issue, but I could see it was based upon COVID.
I will say this here,
And then
and
they
I
would
don't
say
want
they
to.
never got tested. So they actually don't know.
Exactly.
They
And
don't
that's
know the truth.
I'm going to bring someone up, and I don't want people getting all in their feelings, but for example, DMX. A lot of people took the revelation that DMX had recently recovered from a COVID-19 infection and had just got the vaccine to say, see, that's why you shouldn't take the vaccine. They done took DMX out. No, let me explain to you. When you have a COVID-19 infection, it's a multi-organ infection, meaning heart, the major three that are damaged, and I've seen across the board this year, heart,
Kidney.
lung, brain. Kidneys are slowly
Heart,
coming out, but kidneys are the ones taking out Black and brown people. So I'm going to
Got
say the top three across the US
Got it.
is heart, lung, brain.
So
Kidneys are taking out a lot of, hold on.
he
And the
had
fifth one is aneurysms.
COVID-19, as you heard.
Yes, and that's what Entertainment Tonight and CNN confirmed. He had just recently recovered from a COVID-19 infection. So the reason I'm bringing this up, just because you've recovered from COVID doesn't mean you've recovered. There is still damage. A lot of the people suffering from post-acute COVID syndrome, or even who've been discharged from a hospital, most tests cannot see, most of the generic tests they give you, such as a CT scan and an MRI, cannot find most COVID damage unless it was severe COVID infection. What we now know is what the COVID infection I had was mild. I'm going to repeat. I had a mild COVID infection. I don't want to see, I don't want to even know moderate and severe. I had a mild COVID infection. My heart rate has not dropped below 115 in 6 months. We all know there's damage somewhere in my heart. We can't find it. And we have now discovered the only scanner that can find this ish out is only in 5 cities in the US. So there's not an MRI, there's not a CT scan, there's not an ultrasound that I can do that's going to show the extent of the damage. The ultrasound luckily showed there was damage.
3D?
Because it's inside. So when you have inflammation, just think of a balloon.
Yeah.
You're not going to see that balloon was blown up and then the air was let out. You're going to have to actually look inside and see the stretch marks carefully and see the damage. So usually when we do an MRI and a CT scan, we're looking for patterns, like algorithms, we'll call them. And so when you have a CT scan or MRI, a computer is looking for patterns. That's what the technician does. It just tells the computer, or he or she tells the computer to look for patterns. And there's algorithms built into the software of the MRI machine and the CT scanners that goes, we see a weird thing over here. We associate that with lung cancer. We see a weird thing over here. We associate that with a heart attack. And that's how a lot of diagnoses happen in the ER or in tech clinics. The problem is when you're seeing something for the first time and the algorithm hasn't been created yet to notice a pattern, it's gonna miss it. When you hear doctors who are on late night TV shows going, oh, I now know how to look for COVID, even though the person has a negative COVID test, I look at their lungs and it looks like shattered glass. That's a pattern they picked up on in spring 2020. So before the software or the algorithms in the machine could pick up on that pattern, doctors were like, I'm getting clients back to back with these same symptoms.
Like this. Their x-rays look like this.
And I noticed that what their x-rays and scans look like. Because what's the most basic original computer? The human mind. So that's what your doctor does. You want your doctor to have seen so many patients that they start building their own algorithm. Okay, this person's complaining of shortness of breath. They can barely stand. Their blood pressure is high, heart rate's high. They're saying they have gastrointestinal distress. I got it. I have 5 other patients like that in her same age group who have no COVID exposure and have a negative COVID test. Got it. And that's why it's important when you talk to your doctor. I don't care if your doctor hangs up the phone on you. I've been there. Go to an urgent care clinic if you can afford it and can do it. And make sure you tell them, I am concerned I have post-acute COVID symptoms or syndrome. They have to write that down in your chart. That's a pattern marker. I am having shortness of breath. That's a pattern marker. I have not been able to return to work in 3+ months. They have to write that down in your chart. I am experiencing pain on a level between 7 and 9 out of 10. That's another note in your chart. And eventually, regardless of if your doctor or the medical facility wants to admit it, if somebody comes in there and they're like me, the data and the bits of information tell a story, they can look at it and go, do you know you've been discharging COVID patients for the past 8 months? You know all these are COVID patients, but they don't have a positive COVID. If it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, and we now know what a duck looks like, and we've seen not one duck, but several varieties of ducks, yo, it's a duck.
Pull it out now.
And that's why you need to say it.
And this, I think.
Oh, thank God.
No. What you had to offer and explain, I promise you have saved lives. I promise.
Thank you. And
I'd like to
thank you for providing this.
Yeah, like I feel blessed that I had the ability to change directions, because as much as I love celebrity drama, right? And tomorrow morning I'll do a celebrity drama, but as much as I love it, the world changed.
Yeah.
And I'm here for the change, and I do not want people to die. Like, I want educated people to understand what COVID is personally to them, right? And to maybe everyone be a little bit more resilient in your education. Oh, people are saying something. A little bit more resilient in your education. You know, I would say if you would change your news to Al Jazeera news,
Al Jazeera English on YouTube.
On YouTube, Al Jazeera News, you'll get a lot more foreign, authentic information about other countries, which has woken me up with COVID, especially going on here. 2 things. I'd like you to come back and talk about children, maybe next month, because although they're just in school, many kids recently, a week ago, went back to hybrid learning. Yeah. I want to know what that looks like and what COVID looks like to children. So do your research and come back and talk to moms in May, because they're going back to school in August. So we don't have enough time to see the impact. And the other thing that scares me is that what's going on in Michigan will spread out. So what's all that going to look like? But we'll by May, there'll be a whole new set of information, because that's what the COVID is. COVID is not. I tell everyone, everyone that it's not going away until 2023.
And I will say this here. Yes, I would love to come back in May because my experience with trying to convince parents about what option they should go with and me having those hard conversations with, it's not just your exposure, like the kid bringing it to you. It's what's happening to your son or daughter. And I'll say a mini story that I have a family member right now who's recovering right now in Gainesville from a COVID-19 infection. And he was put on a ventilator and then taken off, and they're saying it's going to take him a while to recover. You're going to start hearing over the next couple of weeks, as we're hearing the increasing number of COVID cases in children. I assume by next month, we're going to have so much information. And I want you to keep an open mind that this is a new virus. A lot of information was new. And yes, there may be some people purposely trying to make economic decisions and sending your kids back to school. But now we need to look at what does the 2021, 2022 school year looks like and not repeat the mistakes and naivete we had then. On the second part, thank you for using your platform for this. And I will say thank you for letting me get long-winded. It's amazing to have access to a platform that I'd be able to go like, hey, these are the things I scream into my notebook because I'm watching the news trying to figure out how to help people. Yeah. And as we're moving forward, I hope you all took from this conversation, do not be scared. I am dealing with this on a personal and professional level of it impacting every day of my life. And a lot of people will say I have no reason to have hope. And if myself in my situation is saying, hey, I've gotten more help in the past 8 weeks than this entire year. I just had a call at the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville and their neurological unit. And they're like, oh, we finally are realizing, yeah, people are having severe neurological symptoms. And we have one of those scanners you need access to figure out where your seizures are coming from and what brain damage they're causing and what we can do to fix it. And we want to actually have you come here. And I'm a nobody in the middle of Northern Florida. So I'll say this here. It's scary.
Guys,
nobody's a nobody.
Yeah, I don't like, certain words of expression of a metaphysical person. Because I know how you're sharing the information, right? So somebody else can get the same services for the Mayo Clinic, but might keep it to themselves and just for their own family. You're going to get the information and be able to explain to everyone what this machine can do. Right. Do you understand?
I understand. And I'm going to say,
the Black woman getting the information that we need to hear, then be our queen and go get that medical information, please.
I will say, I hope that is the reason I'm still here. But do not lose faith. I know the ones who've been taking it seriously are like, oh my God, I got to do another year of this nonsense because it seems like we haven't learned our lesson. But I'm going to say this here. Yes, but what I've learned every 2 to 3 weeks with this is that you are being prepared for a higher and tougher test. And you're not going to go into that unprepared. I will say now, just on a physical level, my pain threshold, I confidently can say I could be stabbed. And I'm not going to say I'm not going to scream in pain, but I can mentally handle it a lot better than I could do earlier. And that's just me to end off on a lighthearted note. I'll try not to. But I will say this here. Just have hope. The fortunate thing is it's not just you. A lot of people are suffering in silence. And if the Texas Roadhouse CEO felt he wasn't getting help, a lot of people like Texas Roadhouse, and he made a lot of people a lot of money. It's now in their best interest to figure out how to end this, given all the other plans we've done haven't worked. And maybe finally, not everyone will learn the lesson, but somebody is learning the lesson. And that's what this is about.
Somebody said, what if you don't have a doctor to go to? So I'm typing in, check into Obamacare in your state, right?
And urgent care clinics.
It's available to sign on until May 1st.
And I will add this one drop and I have to wrap up because my symptoms are coming back. You also have the option of telemed. So if you do not have an option of a doctor in your area code or zip code, the wonderful thing about coronavirus is that they're not looking for you to drop in. So you
They
can
don't
do
want to, they
telemed
don't want to see you.
appointments.
Yeah,
You can do a telemed appointment unless you need to get vital signs done, and then you
yeah,
can go to an urgent care clinic for a flat fee and get those done and then shared with your primary care or the doctor looking into you via telemed. So
yeah.
with all that being said, I'm being told that yes, I was born on May 17th, 1990 at 9 o'clock a.m., but it's almost 9 o'clock p.m. and I got to wrap it up.
Okay, so let me tell you, I just had my telehealth
Mm-hmm.
on Friday. Got my prescriptions, whatever I needed. Telehealth is just as amazing because what do you do when you go in to see a doctor? You have a conversation.
Exactly.
You get to do your vitals. What they did, they at least come in and do your blood work, but that has nothing to do with your doctor's appointment. So we had the doctor's appointment. We talked about this, that, and the third.
Yep.
And then I went in and did my blood work, and they haven't called me either. Usually, when your blood work is really bad, they call you. They're like,
Right.
"So hi,
The
blood
dreaded.
work back, and so it looks good, but we've got some concerns." I'm not even gonna phone call. So if I get a phone call now, I'm gonna.
But I'll say this here. You have those options. Use
I
them.
do. Yes. And
And
whoever does it, you have Obamacare in your state. It's there until May 1st. Check the .gov.
they're throwing hundreds of dollars at premiums. I saved another $200 on my premium, so I'm just saying.
But just so you know,
Yeah.
the rates are lower than they've ever been. I
Yeah.
mean, low. So go ahead and sign up. You think you do not have a doctor. You think you do not have services. At the very least, while Biden is in office, sign up for Obamacare, please.
Yeah.
It is the gift that keeps giving. Please sign up. While
Yeah.
45 was in, I had Obamacare. It skyrocketed. Skyrocketed.
Yeah.
Do you hear me? It skyrocketed.
Mine's went up $300.
I
Trust me,
was
I know.
in. It was so inexpensive. I just need to go see the doctor every 3 months. I don't need to be spending $200 to see a doctor every 3 months. That's
So
got up to in the same income bracket.
I'm
Oh,
gonna say
no. Actually, on top of it, I changed age brackets. When I changed age brackets, I was a whole nother problem for Obamacare based upon 45 being in office. You kidding me?
yes.
And I wasn't entitled to Medicare. So I
Yeah.
wasn't entitled to the senior citizen, but I also wasn't young enough. I was in that weird in-between stage. And they said, you pay the most.
Yes, because we know something gonna happen to you because you're approaching that 50 mark, but
Because I'm
we don't want
in
to pay
that
for it.
age bracket. Of course something's going to happen to her. We have stats.
Okay, but before we scare the people away, Obamacare, I will say here, for my age bracket, I went from $500 a month for a bronze plan, which is basically you get 3 free doctor visits and you have a semi-high deductible, but not horrible, and you get free
Yeah.
vaccine and everything goes.
Yeah.
I saved $200 and $300 a month now with Biden in office. So check it, as well as with telemed, you are not limited by your zip code now. So do those things. And I will say here, if you're having post-acute COVID symptoms or syndrome, or you think you do, bring it up to your doctor. Paper trail is what's going to help piece together the breadcrumbs of who's affected and who's not. And if you know someone, bring this up to them. Send them a little YouTube clip to go like, this looks like you, girl. Just saying. And on that note, I am going to have to sign off on that one. But thank you, Tracey. Thank you, everyone. And everyone
We'll
have
see
a
you
good
next
and
month.
blessed night.
Thank you so much.
No
Just let
problem.
me, before you go, don't leave me.
Oh, no worries. And thank you.
All right. This is our favorite scientist. So come back and educate us. It's our favorite scientist.
I'm trying to give Miss Frizzle a run for her money. Got to get this afro up.
That's right. Thank you, sweetie.
No problem. Bye.
Bye. Oh my God, that was amazing. Thank you all. I am honored to have her. I love you. Good.
Gals and guys, guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Tracey Brown, Tracey Brown. Tracey Brown Live. Tracey Brown Live. Tracey Brown.